In the heart of Eldridge Hollow lies a tale so chilling it will haunt your very soul. Welcome to the Shadows, where tonight we delve into the terrifying legend of Abigail Thornwood. A seance gone horribly wrong awakens a vengeful witch trapped between worlds for centuries. Witness the transformation of Emma, once a friend, now a vessel for evil, and Tyler, marked forever by the witch's touch. Experience a night of unspeakable terror as Abigail unleashes her fury upon the unsuspecting descendants of those who wronged her. From sinister seductions to a destructive final act, this story is a harrowing journey of vengeance and the supernatural. Dare to uncover the truth behind the witch's curse and the eternal torment of souls. Are you brave enough to face the horrors of Eldridge Hollow? The night air was cool and crisp, carrying with it the faint whisper of an impending lunar eclipse. In the small, isolated town of Eldridge Hollow, a group of teenagers gathered around a flickering campfire in the woods. The firelight danced across their eager faces, casting long, ominous shadows on the ground. "Did you guys hear about the abandoned church on the outskirts of town?" asked Tyler, the adventurous one of the group, his eyes glinting with curiosity. He tossed a stick into the fire, watching the embers spark and fly. "Yeah, it's been empty for ages," replied Emma, a history buff with an affinity for the town's dark past. "They say it's haunted by the spirit of a witch executed there centuries ago." The others, Mia and Alex, exchanged a glance. Mia, a skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "Haunted? Come on, that's just an old tale to scare kids." Alex, a tech geek and paranormal enthusiast, chimed in. "What if it's true? What if we could actually contact her?" "That's insane," scoffed Mia, but her voice held a hint of intrigue. Tyler leaned forward, the fire reflecting in his eyes. "What if we do a seance tonight, during the lunar eclipse? It's the perfect time. They say the veil between worlds is thinnest then." The idea hung in the air, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling around the group. "Why the church, though?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with caution. "Because," Tyler said slowly, "if the stories are true, that's where the witch's spirit would be strongest. It's where she was executed after all." The group fell silent, considering the gravity of the suggestion. The idea of venturing into the unknown, of flirting with the supernatural, was both terrifying and exhilarating. "All right," Emma finally said, breaking the silence. "Let's do it, but we need to be careful." Equipped with flashlights and a makeshift Ouija board, the teenagers made their way through the dark, winding paths of the woods, heading towards the abandoned church. The building loomed ominously against the night sky, its dilapidated spire casting a long, foreboding shadow. As they stepped inside the church, the air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped them. The once hallowed ground now felt desecrated, the remnants of the past lingering like a bad memory. They set up the Ouija board at the altar, the moonlight streaming through the broken stained glass windows, bathing the interior in a ghostly glow. As they joined hands around the board, the weight of their decision settled upon them. "Is anyone there?" Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible. The planchette remained still, and for a moment it seemed as though nothing would happen. But then, slowly it began to move. Under the ghostly luminescence of the lunar eclipse, the abandoned church was a cavern of shadows and whispers. The teenagers, their hands clasped tightly around the Ouija board, held their breath as the planchette began to glide across the board with a life of its own. "M-I-S-E-R-Y, spelled out the planchette, under the guidance of an unseen force. Mia's face paled. "Misery," she echoed, her voice trembling. The air inside the church had grown thick, charged with a palpable sense of dread. A cold draft swept through the broken windows, extinguishing their candles in one swift breath, plunging them into darkness. From the shadows, a low, haunting laugh echoed, sending chills down their spines. Tyler fumbled for his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, revealing nothing but the decrepit walls of the church. Suddenly, Emma, who had been unusually quiet, began to convulse, her eyes rolling back into her head. The others watched in horror as she slumped forward, her body eerily still. Then, in a voice that was not her own, deep and laced with malice, she spoke. "You dare to summon me, children. You know not what you have awoken." "Emma, are you okay?" Alex stammered, his voice laced with fear. But the entity controlling Emma sneered. "She is merely a vessel for me now. I am the witch you so foolishly sought, and for your arrogance, I will ensure you all suffer as I have suffered." The temperature in the room plummeted, their breaths visible in the icy air. Shadows seemed to twist and contort around them, forming grotesque shapes. Mia, panic-stricken, reached out to break the circle, grabbing the Ouija board and throwing it across the room. "We need to leave, now." They hastily gathered their belongings, dragging the still entranced Emma with them. As they fled the church, the witch's laughter followed them, a sinister echo fading into the night. Once outside, under the safety of the moonlight, Emma collapsed, gasping for air. Her eyes, once again her own, were filled with confusion and fear. Did it work? What happened?" she stammered, looking around at her friends' terrified faces. Tyler, his voice shaky, replied, "Something happened, but not what we expected. We need to get out of here." They hurried back through the woods, the eerie feeling of being watched never leaving them. As they reached their homes, a sense of relief washed over them, believing the nightmare to be over. But for Emma, something lingered within. As she lay in bed that night, trying to convince herself it was all just a game gone wrong, a whisper in her mind echoed, "You are never alone now." In the depths of the night, a shadow moved across her room, and a cold, sinister laugh filled the air. Emma's heart raced as she realized the witch's spirit had not been left behind in the church. It had come home with her. Ah, my dear nocturnal scholars of the macabre. It's time for a quick scare break. As we linger in these shadowy realms, a small favour I dare to ask. If my tales of terror bring you thrills, do not let our journey end here. Hit like, subscribe, and join our dark congregation. Now shall we delve deeper into the abyss. Let's embrace the darkness once more. Let's get back to the shadows. Days turned into weeks since the ominous seance at the abandoned church, but for Emma and her friends, life in Eldridge Hollow had irrevocably changed. The once cheerful and compassionate Emma had transformed into someone they barely recognized. Her demeanor was now sharp and callous, a stark contrast to her former self. Emma took a twisted pleasure in the misfortunes of others. A once kind-hearted soul, she now reveled in their discomfort and pain. Her laughter, once melodic and warm, had turned cold and mocking. Her words were laced with venom, cutting through the hearts of those who knew her. Her friends noticed the drastic change with growing concern. Tyler, Emma's childhood friend, recalled her comforting presence and how it had been replaced with an intimidating aura. "She's not the Emma we knew," he confided in Alex and Mia, his voice heavy with worry. Mia, who had always been skeptical, now harbored a deep unease. "It's like she enjoys seeing people suffer. That's not normal." In town, Emma's newfound cruelty was on full display. She berated shop workers over trivial matters, her scathing remarks leaving them in shock and distress. To Emma, these people were nothing more than insects, unworthy of her time or patience. Her once close-knit circle of friends attempted to intervene, hoping to break through to the Emma they once knew. They confronted her, their expressions a mix of concern and fear. "Emma, this isn't you. You've changed," Tyler said gently, reaching out to her. But Emma recoiled from his touch, her eyes flashing with contempt. "Changed? No. I've simply awakened to the truth. You are all beneath me, mere insects crawling in the dirt. You're not worthy of my time." Her words cut through them like knives, each syllable dripping with disdain. The friends exchanged worried glances, realizing the gravity of the situation. Emma was no longer the person they grew up with. She was something else entirely, something dark and malevolent. As Emma stormed off, leaving her friends in stunned silence, a sinister smile played on her lips. She felt powerful, untouchable. But beneath the surface, a part of the old Emma screamed in horror, trapped and helpless against the witch's influence that now dominated her soul. The witch's spirit had not just followed Emma, it had claimed her, and the battle for her soul was just beginning. The sun was setting when Tyler received the unexpected call from Emma. Her voice, soft and apologetic, was a stark contrast to the harshness of the past weeks. "Tyler, can you come over? I want to apologize. In person." "Just you," she pleaded. Tyler, his heart heavy with a mix of hope and apprehension, agreed. He arrived at Emma's house as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. The door opened before he could knock, revealing Emma in a strangely inviting demeanor. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, leading him inside. The house felt different, charged with an unsettling energy. Emma's eyes held a predatory glint as she gazed at Tyler, her intentions clear. She moved closer, her touch sending shivers down his spine. Tyler, caught between concern and a growing unease, tried to speak, but Emma silenced him with a finger to his lips. "You will come when I call you, boy. You are mine now," she murmured, her voice laced with an authority that wasn't entirely her own. Tyler felt an inexplicable pull, a force beyond his control, drawing him deeper into her embrace. The next day, Tyler's friends noticed the bruises and scratches on his skin. Concern etched on their faces. They bombarded him with questions, but Tyler remained tight-lipped, a haunted look in his eyes. Unbeknownst to them, the witch, still tethered to the ethereal plane, was using Emma as her vessel. She could not fully cross over to their world, her spirit fragmented by centuries of unrest. But through Emma, she found a way to exert her influence. Her plan was sinister yet simple. To fully materialize in the physical world, she needed to anchor herself to a living soul, and Tyler was her chosen conduit. Emma, her once innocent host, was now a pawn in her dark game, a vessel through which she could manipulate and control. As the witch grew stronger, her hold on Emma tightened, her essence seeping into every fiber of her being. Emma, trapped within her own mind, was a prisoner to the witch's will, unable to fight against the overwhelming darkness. The witch's laughter echoed in the void between worlds, her plan inching closer to fruition. Tyler and Emma, entwined in her malevolent scheme, were the key to her ultimate liberation, a liberation that would unleash her fury upon the world. The history of the witch, now entwined with Emma's fate, was a tale steeped in tragedy and revenge. Centuries ago, in the early days of Eldridge Hollow, there lived a woman named Abigail Thornwood. She was known for her vast knowledge of herbal remedies and natural healing, a gift that drew both admiration and suspicion from the townsfolk. As a healer, Abigail was compassionate and kind, aiding those in need regardless of their status. However, her abilities and independence sparked fear among the more superstitious villagers. Whispers of witchcraft began to circulate, fueled by envy and ignorance. The situation escalated when a mysterious illness swept through the town. Desperate and frightened, the people turned against Abigail, accusing her of cursing them. Despite her pleas of innocence and lack of evidence, she was deemed a witch and sentenced to death. Abigail was executed on the grounds of the very church where the teenagers held their seance. With her dying breath, she cursed those who wronged her, vowing to return and exact her revenge. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave, her story becoming nothing more than a dark legend in Eldridge Hollow. But Abigail's spirit could not rest. Fueled by anger and a desire for vengeance, she lingered in the shadows of the ethereal plane, waiting for a chance to cross over. The lunar eclipse and seance provided her with the perfect opportunity. As the witch controlling Emma, Abigail sought to complete what she couldn't in life. She wanted to make the descendants of those who had wronged her pay, to bring misery and despair as she had suffered. Her wrath was not just aimed at the town, but at the world that had allowed such injustice. Through Emma, Abigail found a voice and a means to enact her plan. She saw in Emma the same strength and independence she once possessed, making her the perfect vessel for her return. By binding herself to Tyler, she could anchor her spirit to the physical world, breaking the barriers between the living and the dead. The witch's desire for retribution had festered over centuries, growing into an insatiable thirst for revenge. Her pain and anger were now a malevolent force, threatening to unleash chaos upon Eldridge Hollow and beyond. In this twisted game of vengeance, Emma and Tyler were the pawns, and the stakes were higher than they could ever imagine. The witch's history was a grim reminder of the dangers of fear and misunderstanding, and her return was a dark testament to the enduring power of hatred. Tyler stood in Emma's home, his body a canvas of bruises and scratches, souvenirs of their intense, almost frenzied encounters. Emma, or rather, the entity that had overtaken her, seemed to transform with each passing moment, her eyes gleaming with a dark, unworldly fire. Under the witch's compelling influence, they found themselves drawn back to the abandoned church, the site of Abigail Thornwood's execution and the epicenter of her vengeful spirit. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dated structure. As they entered the church, the air crackled with a palpable energy. The witch, through Emma, began to chant in an ancient, forgotten language, her voice resonating with a power that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Tyler, trapped in a trance-like state, could only watch as the ritual unfolded. The witch's spirit swirled around them, a whirlwind of shadows and whispers. Her presence was overwhelming, a force of pure malevolence and vengeance. The walls of the church seemed to pulse with her energy, the stained glass windows shattering as her power grew. Emma's body contorted, her movements unnatural and jerky, as the witch's spirit fought to fully manifest in the physical realm. Tyler, caught in the eye of this supernatural storm, felt the witch's energy coursing through him, binding him to her will. He was powerless to resist, his own spirit diminishing under her formidable presence. As the ritual reached its climax, the air itself seemed to tear, the barrier between worlds thinning. Abigail's spirit, full of rage and hatred, surged forth, her ethereal form becoming more solid with each passing second. Emma's body, once a vessel, now became a conduit for the witch's full resurrection. Her eyes, once full of life and warmth, now glowed with a sinister light, the light of a soul consumed by centuries of anger. Tyler, his will completely overpowered, watched in horror as the witch's transformation completed. Abigail Thornwood stood before him, no longer just a vengeful spirit, but a corporeal being, fueled by vengeance and hate. The church, now a ruin of its former self, echoed with the witch's triumphant laughter. She revelled in her newfound power, her gaze cold and merciless. Emma and Tyler, once vibrant individuals, were now mere shells, their essences devoured by the witch's overwhelming need for retribution. Abigail Thornwood, the witch of Eldridge Hollow, had returned, more powerful and malevolent than ever. Her vengeance knew no bounds, and her wrath was set to descend upon the unsuspecting town. The power she wielded was a dark testament to her enduring hatred, a force that would leave nothing but despair and destruction in its wake. In the heart of the ruined church, under the spectral glow of the moon, Abigail Thornwood, now fully manifested, prepared for her most malevolent act yet. With newfound power coursing through her, she set up her own seance, a dark mirror to the one that had freed her. Her intention was twisted yet poignant, to summon the spirits of those who had wronged her centuries ago. She wanted them to bear witness to the havoc she would wreak upon their descendants, to feel the helplessness and despair she had endured. As she began the incantation, the air grew heavy, the shadows in the church deepening. One by one, ethereal forms began to materialize around her. The spirits of the long-dead townsfolk, those who had accused and condemned her, appeared, their faces etched with confusion and fear. Abigail revelled in their horror. "You who cast me to my death shall now see the consequences of your actions," she hissed, her voice echoing through the hollow church. The spirits, bound to her will, could only watch as she invoked another spell, this time to identify the living descendants of those who had wronged her. As names and faces appeared in her mind's eye, a sinister plan took shape. Before, as a disembodied spirit, Abigail's powers were limited. She could influence and manipulate, but her ability to interact with the physical world was restricted. Her incomplete state prevented her from enacting the full scope of her vengeance. But now, embodied once again, she possessed the capacity to affect both the spiritual and physical realms. She turned her attention to the helpless spirits. "You shall be my silent audience," she declared, "witnesses to the retribution I will bring upon your bloodlines. Your descendants will suffer as I did, and you will be powerless to stop me." The spirits, bound by her powerful magic, could do nothing but watch in horror as Abigail set her sights on the town of Eldridge Hollow. Her wrath was no longer just of a threat. It was a promise of destruction and pain. As she left the church, the spirits of the past lingering behind, the witch's laughter filled the night. Eldridge Hollow, unaware of the storm about to descend upon it, lay in peaceful ignorance, its residents oblivious to the nightmare that awaited them. Abigail Thornwood, once a healer and now a harbinger of vengeance, stepped into the shadows, her heart set on unleashing centuries of pent-up fury. The night, once a cover for rest and dreams, now heralded a terror that would be remembered for generations to come. The moon hung high over Eldridge Hollow as Abigail Thornwood, now a vessel of vengeance, began her night of terror. Her every step was a harbinger of doom, her laughter a chilling prelude to the horrors she would unleash. One by one, she visited the homes of those descended from the townsfolk who had condemned her centuries ago. Each act of retribution was more cruel and merciless than the last. She revelled in their fear and confusion, drawing strength from their despair. The powerless spirits of her accusers watched in horror, unable to intervene as their descendants faced the witch's wrath. In one house, she delighted in the terror of a family as they cowered before her, their pleas for mercy fueling her malevolent joy. In another, she laughed maniacally as she turned the happiness of a celebratory gathering into a nightmare of chaos and fear. As the night wore on, the town descended into panic. Eldridge Hollow, once a quiet and peaceful place, became a landscape of fear and despair. The witch, once a healer, now took pleasure in pain and suffering, her heart seemingly void of any remnants of the compassionate woman she once was. However, as dawn approached, her path of destruction led her to a house at the edge of town. There, she found a young woman, an outcast much like herself, known for her strange ways and healing abilities. The townspeople regarded her with suspicion and wariness, yet she continued to help them, driven by a sense of duty and kindness. Abigail paused, a flicker of confusion crossing her malevolent facade. She watched as the young healer tended to a sick child, her hands gentle and her voice soothing. Something within Abigail stirred, a distant echo of the person she once was. The sight of this young woman, so similar to her former self, ignited a battle within the witch. Her vengeful, hate-filled side clashed with the emerging memories of empathy and compassion she once held dear. Abigail's form wavered, her once solid figure flickering as the two sides of her spirit fought for dominance. The healer looked up, her eyes meeting the witch's, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. The night of terror, which had seemed unending, now stood still. Abigail, caught in the turmoil of her own soul, faced a choice. Could the remnants of her former self, buried under centuries of anger and pain, find the strength to overcome the darkness that had consumed her? In the eyes of the young healer, a descendant of her own bloodline, Abigail saw a reflection of who she could have been, a reminder of the life that was stolen from her. The choice she made now would not only seal her fate, but also the fate of Eldridge Hollow. Would the dawn bring an end to the nightmare, or would the witch's reign of terror continue unabated? The answer lay within the depths of Abigail Thornwood's tormented soul. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Abigail Thornwood, her spirit torn between vengeance and a flicker of her former self, made her way back to the ruins of the abandoned church. The decision she faced at the healer's home had ignited a tumultuous storm within her soul. Standing amidst the decayed pews and shattered stained glass, Abigail raised her hands, her powers surging around her in a maelstrom of dark energy. The air crackled with the intensity of her emotions, a physical manifestation of her inner turmoil. With a final, resolute cry, she unleashed her powers in a cataclysmic explosion of energy. The church, the site of her execution and the origin of her curse, began to crumble. Stones and wood groaned and splintered as the building appeared to be consumed by an unseen force, collapsing inward as if being dragged down into the very depths of the earth. Abigail, at the epicenter of this destruction, stood firm, her eyes reflecting the chaos around her. As the church imploded, it created a vortex, a gateway that seemed to lead to an abyss. The witch, along with the remnants of the church, was pulled into this void, a final act of self-destruction that would ensure her spirit would never again walk the earth. However, in a cruel twist of fate, Abigail's last act was not only to condemn herself, but to also trap the spirits of those who had wronged her centuries ago. With her remaining energy, she bound them to the mortal plane, denying them the peace of the afterlife. These spirits, once the accusers and executioners of Abigail Thornwood, were now condemned to roam the earth in eternal anguish. They were left to witness the aftermath of their actions, forever reminded of the injustice they had inflicted upon an innocent soul. As the sun rose over Eldridge Hollow, the town awoke to find the church gone, as if it had never existed. In its place was an empty chasm, a dark scar on the landscape that served as a grim reminder of the night's horrors. The witch was gone, but the legacy of her pain and anger lingered. The spirits of the past, now bound to the site of their greatest sin, became a haunting testament to the consequences of fear and misunderstanding. The town slowly began to heal from the night of terror, but the memory of Abigail Thornwood and the spirits trapped in eternal torment served as a cautionary tale, a warning that some injustices can reverberate through time, leaving scars that may never fully heal. In today's chilling story, three friends realize that playing games with the supernatural is a price not many are willing to pay. Will they be able to silence the spirits they released? Or will the spirits silence them? Three friends, Jack, Sarah, and Alex, gathered in the dimly lit living room of their creaking Victorian-era house. The air carried an otherworldly chill that seemed to seep through the ancient floorboards, raising the hairs on their arms. A tale whispered by the locals lingered in their minds, a tale that spoke of a reclusive old woman at the end of the street, Mrs. Abernathy, rumoured to possess a connection to the supernatural. The flickering glow of candlelight cast an eerie shadow on the walls as they huddled around a worn wooden table, with a worn-out Ouija board and a scattering of dusty crystals. Curiosity and a misplaced sense of invisibility fueled the desire to experience something beyond the mundane. "Come on, guys, it's just a bit of fun," Jake declared, a nervous smile playing on his lips. "Let's see if the old lady really can connect to the other side." With reluctant nods, they set out into the moonlit night, navigating the twisted cobblestone streets to Mrs. Abernathy's ramshackle abode. The wind whispered through the gnarled branches, carrying with it an unsettling melody that seemed to echo the mournful cries of unseen spirits. Mrs. Abernathy's residence loomed ahead, a decaying mansion cloaked in ivy and obscured by the shadows of ancient trees. The windows, like empty eye sockets, stared blankly into the night. The friends hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances, but the thrill of the unknown propelled them forward. Upon entering the dimly lit parlour, the air thickened with an oppressive energy. The scent of must and decay hung in the air, as though the very walls were exhaling secrets long forgotten. Mrs. Abernathy, a frail figure wrapped in layers and shawls, regarded them with piercing, ageless eyes. "You seek the spirits," she croaked, her voice a haunting melody. "But be warned, once the veil is lifted, it cannot be easily closed." As the seance begun, Mrs. Abernathy chanted ancient incantations, her withered hands guiding the planchette across the Ouija board. The atmosphere grew dense, and the temperature plummeted. Unseen forces seemed to gather around them, whispering secrets in a language long lost to the ages. Suddenly, a guttural groan echoed through the room, and Mrs. Abernathy's eyes widened in terror. The oppressive energy escalated, seizing control of her fragile form. In an instant, her heart gave way to an overwhelming power of ancient spirit she had contained for decades. The friends watched in horror as Mrs. Abernathy convulsed, her body a vessel for the malevolent force now unleashed. The room plunged into darkness, the only illumination emanating from the ethereal glow of spiritual entities taking shape. The once innocent quest for thrills had turned into a nightmare, and the friends, paralyzed with fear, now faced the chilling consequences of meddling with forces beyond their understanding. The spirits, now free, hungered for revenge, and the three friends were unwittingly entangled in a web of darkness that threatened to consume them whole. Weeks passed since that fateful night, and the once ordinary lives of Jake, Sarah, and Alex were now overshadowed by an unrelenting darkness. The air in the shared Victorian home felt charged with unseen malice and an ominous weight that settled in every nook and cranny. The friends tried to push the memory of Mrs. Abernethy's demise to the recess of their minds, but the supernatural scars left by the unleashed spirits festered beneath the surface. Shadows danced menacingly in the corner of their vision, and the faint echoes of ghostly whispers lingered in the quiet moments. Night after night, they found themselves plagued by a relentless parade of nightmares, each one more twisted and horrifying than the last. A spectral presence seemed to seep into their dreams, a manifestation of the ancient spirits seeking to bind themselves to the living. The atmosphere within the house grew increasingly oppressive. Creaks and groans echoed through the hallways as if the very foundations were haunted by restless entities. Objects moved on their own accord, and a chill settled in the air even during the warmest of days. One evening, as they gathered in the living room to confront the mounting unease, a flickering candle cast eerie shadows on the walls. An unspoken understanding passed between them as they exchanged anxious glances. "I can't shake this feeling," Sarah confessed, her voice quivering. "It's like we're being watched, followed." Jake nodded in agreement. "And those dreams, I can't tell where reality ends and the nightmares are beginning." As they spoke, the shadows in the room seemed to coalesce, taking on sinister forms. Wisps of darkness slithered across the floor, intertwining with the ethereal echoes of Mrs. Abernethy's final moments. The spirits, hungry for a connection to the living, reached out to the friends with unseen tendrils. The encounters intensified, malevolent whispers, echoes through the halls, taunting them with fragments of forgotten sins. The friends, once bound by the innocence of their friendship, now found themselves isolated by the encroaching darkness. Feeling suffocated by the oppressive atmosphere in their Victorian home, Jake decided to take a break from the haunted halls and escape to the coastal town by train. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on the tracks offered a momentary respite as the train carved through the night. However, the shadows that clung to Jake's existence seemed to follow, refusing to release their grip. As the train sped along the tracks, Jane became acutely aware of a peculiar figure seated across the aisle. The person, an old haggard soul, bore eyes that gleamed with an unnatural intensity. Unsettled, Jake attempted to dismiss the eerie gaze, attributing it to mere paranoia. But as the minutes ticked by, the old figure's fixation intensified, and it was as if the eyes held an ancient hunger, fixated on something beyond the veil of the mundane. The tension reached a breaking point when, without warning, the old figure bolted from the seat, sprinting towards Jake with a guttural cry. Passengers around them remained oblivious, their gazes fixed on books, phones, or the passing scenery. The air buzzed with an otherworldly energy as the spirit, now revealed, continued to scream, "I want it! I want it!" Panicking, Jake scanned the train, desperately seeking validation that the others shared this spectral encounter. Yet, the world around remained indifferent. Passengers absorbed in their own reality, blind to the supernatural drama unfolding. The relentless pursuit forced Jake to confront the unthinkable. The spirit was drawn to him, seeking a connection, a life force to anchor him to the world of the living. With every scream, the spirit's desperation echoed through Jake's mind, threatening to unravel his sanity. As the train neared the coastal town, Jake's anxiety reached a fever pitch. Seeking solace, he decided to visit a nearby church, hoping that the sacred ground would provide sanctuary from the relentless pursuit. But fate had other plans. As Jake traversed the cemetery en route to the church, a chorus of ethereal whispers emanated from the gravestones. Shadows detached themselves from the tombstones, coalescing into ghostly forms. Each spirit, once bound to the earthly plane, now sought refuge in Jake's presence. The air grew thick with the weight of accumulated sorrow, and the spirits, like moths to a flame, latched onto Jake's essence. The haunting chorus of their anguish reverberated through the cemetery. Echoing the depths of the supernatural despair, Jake had unwittingly become entangled with. Now we're going to have a short scare break while you ease your nerves. So while you're waiting, don't forget, if you're enjoying the content, go ahead and stab that subscribe button right now. As doing so, you'll really help the professor spread his shadow of evil. Now, let's get back to the story. Sarah, in stark contrast to her friend's growing unease, embraced her party lifestyle with an unwavering enthusiasm. Night after night, she lost herself in the pulsating rhythm of the club, drumming out the ominous whispers that seemed to linger on the edge of her consciousness. One evening, as the bass thumped through the crowded dance floor, Sarah's laughter intermingled with the melodies of a carefree existence. The neon lights cast a surreal glow on the revelers, creating an illusion of detachment from the world outside the club. However, the illusion shattered when Sarah noticed an old woman amidst the vibrant chaos. Her gaze, piercing and relentless, seemed to cut through the vivacity of the scene. Sarah tried to dismiss the eerie sensation crawling up her spine, attributing it to the effects of the flashing lights and loud music. As the night progressed, the old woman's presence persisted. No matter where Sarah turned, or how many friends she engaged with, the haunting gaze followed her every move. An unsettling feeling settled in, a gnawing discomfort that refused to be drowned out by the beats of the music. Attempting to shake off the unnerving encounter, Sarah stepped into the cool night air. Relief washed over her as she believed she had left the mysterious old woman behind. That reprieve was short-lived. A sudden gust of wind carried an otherworldly chill as Sarah hailed a taxi. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, she caught sight of the old woman in the reflection of the car window. Panic seized as she watched a figure sitting beside her, the same haunting gaze fixed on Sarah's soul. In a desperate attempt to escape the figure materializing next to her, Sarah ordered the taxi to speed through the darkened streets. Yet, no matter how fast the vehicle moved, the old woman kept materializing, an ethereal passenger in this otherworldly journey. As the taxi careened through the city, the old woman's presence grew more tangible. The air inside the cab thickened with an unseen force, and the spectral figure, now inches away, unleashed a guttural scream that reverberated through Sarah's very core. "I want it! I want it!" the old woman wailed, her voice an unsettling blend of desperation and longing. Sarah, paralyzed by fear, clutched the edges of the seat, unable to escape the relentless pursuit of the supernatural entity. While Jake and Sarah grappled with the visible onslaught of spirits, Alex, the more studious of the trio, sought refuge in the confines of his home. Immersed in the glow of his computer screen, he delved into the realms of the supernatural, hoping that knowledge would provide a shield against the haunting forces that loomed around him. Days turned into nights as Alex's online exploration led him down virtual rabbit holes filled with tales of the spirit realm, the undead, and the ghosts that lingered in the fringes of existence. His obsession with understanding the supernatural grew, fueled by a desperate need to find a solution to the spectral chaos that had consumed his life. One evening, as he scrolled through the ancient texts on the forums, a knock echoed through the silence of his home. Puzzled, Alex approached the door, expecting to find a neighbor or perhaps a delivery. To his surprise, the doorstep lay empty, void of any human presence. Returning to his study, Alex dismissed the incident as a mere product of his over-imagination. However, as his attention returned to the glow of his computer screen, a figure materialized in an antique armchair across the room. Startled, Alex squinted at the apparition, an old man, worn by the passage of time, yet possessing an otherworldly vitality. Despite the initial shock, Alex cautiously uttered a greeting. "Hello?" No response from the spectral visitor. Alex repeated himself, trying to rationalize the surreal encounter. "You have the wrong home," he insisted, growing uneasy. Silence lingered in the room until, with an unexpected intensity, The old man's voice pierced through the air. "I want it." Confusion etched across Alex's face. "What do you want?" he questions, his voice trembling. "Life," the old man declared, his spectral gaze fixed on Alex. Staring at the ethereal figure, Alex felt a chill run down his spine. The room seemed to contract, as if the very walls were closing in on him. The air thickened with the weight of an unspoken demand, and Alex's quest for knowledge had unwittingly invited an otherworldly presence into his haven of solitude. As the old man's proclamation hung in the air, Alex faced a haunting revelation. The pursuit of understanding had not shielded him from the encroaching darkness. Instead, it had invited a malevolent force, seeking a connection to the vitality of the living. In the midst of his scholarly exploration, Alex had become entangled in a supernatural web, and the boundaries between the realms of the living and the dead had blurred into an undistinguishable tapestry of fear and uncertainty. The friends, burdened by the individual encounters with the supernatural, decided to reunite in a desperate attempt to confront the haunting forces that had woven their lives into a tapestry of terror. Alex, driven by newfound knowledge, shared the unsettling details of his spectral encounter and the revelations he had uncovered through exhaustive research. As the trio gathered in the dimly lit room, the air crackled with an unspoken tension. The haunted expressions on their faces mirrored the collective weight of the otherworldly events that had unfolded. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows, emphasizing the gravity of their shared predicament. "We can't keep ignoring this," Alex declared, his voice determined. "The key to restoring balance lies in allowing the spirits to attach themselves to one of us. It's the only way to put an end to this." Jake and Sarah exchanged skeptical glances, grappling with the implications of Alex's proposal. The notion of willingly becoming a vessel for the tormented souls sent shivers down their spines. Yet the urgency of their situation left them with few alternatives. "But how do we choose?" Sarah questioned, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. Alex hesitated, his gaze shifting between his friends. "We need to consider the circumstances of Mrs. Abernathy's death. The spirits were unleashed because she couldn't contain them any longer. We have to restore the balance by allowing them to attach to one of us, willingly." As they deliberated, a dissonant hum permeated the room, resonating with the lingering energy of the supernatural. Shadows danced on the walls, a silent reminder of the restless spirits awaiting resolution. Friends grappled with an impossible decision. Each of them, in their own way, had experienced the haunting consequences of that ill-fated seance. The weight of the guilt hung heavy, and the spectre of the old lady's demise loomed over them. After moments of tense silence, Jake spoke, his voice sturdier than before. "We can't let this darkness consume us any longer. If it's the only way, then it's the only way." With exhaustion and fear etched across Jake's face, he continued, "No way will it be me, though. I haven't slept for days. This old man is always there, screaming at me. I couldn't take it." As his words hung in the air, a palpable tension settled in the room. The flickering candlelight seemed to dance with an ominous energy, casting distorted shadows on the walls. Sarah and Alex exchanged glances, realizing the gravity of the situation. "You're the strong one, Alex. You do it," Jake implored, his eyes pleading with his friend. But before Alex could respond, the air in the room grew charged with an otherworldly presence. Ectoplasm materialized, oozing from unseen dimensions and filling the space with an eerie luminescence. The temperature dropped, and a spectral figure emerged from the ectoplasmic mist, the old man who had haunted Jake's waking hours and sleepless nights. "You refuse me life." The old man's voice reverberated through the room, an unsettling blend of anger and despair. Ectoplasm surrounded Jake, swirling around him like a sinister vortex. In an instant, he was engulfed, his form dissolving into the spectral mist until he vanished from sight. The room, now eerily silent, bore witness to the reluctant sacrifice that Jake had become. Sarah and Alex stood in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on the empty space where Jake had once stood. The weight of the decision they had faced hung heavily in the air, and the truth dawned upon them. It was not just a choice between life and death, but a negotiation with the forces beyond mortal comprehension. The realization passed between Sarah and Alex, unspoken but understood. To refuse the spirits the gift of life meant succumbing to an inexorable fate. The boundaries between the living and the dead blurred, and the consequences of their actions unfolded in a tragic spectacle. "Screw it," Sarah declared, her voice a mixture of defiance and resignation. "I'll give them what they want. My life is just partying and a different boyfriend each week. Let me have some purpose." As Sarah spoke, a newfound determination overcame her. The room seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if the spirits were eagerly anticipating the fulfillment of their grim bargain. "I'll give you life," Sarah screamed, her voice echoing through the haunted space. Alex reached out, his hand extended, as if to pull her back from the precipice of sacrifice. "Hold on, Sarah," he pleaded, but it was too late. Ectoplasm began to seep from Sarah's eye sockets, mouth and ears, a macabre manifestation of the life force being extracted from her. The room quivered with an unsettling energy as the spirits, now visible in their ethereal forms, converged upon Sarah. The ectoplasmic tendrils wrapped around her, pulling the essence of life from her. Sarah's scream echoed through the room, a chilling sympathy of pain and surrender. The haunting spectacle unfolded, and in the final moments of the ghastly transaction, Sarah's body convulsed as the spirits claimed their due. As the ectoplasm dissipated, Sarah stood in the room, an empty shell devoid of the vibrant energy that once defined her. The spirits, satiated by the life force she willingly offered, retreated into the shadows, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Alex, now the sole witness to the haunting aftermath, stared at Sarah's vacant eyes. The weight of their choices hung in the air, and the reality of the supernatural bargain settled upon him like a heavy shroud. In a sudden twist, Sarah's life had found a new purpose, albeit in the most unexpected of ways. She, who once revelled in the transient pleasures of the living, now bore the burden of being a medium between worlds. As the remnants of the supernatural transaction lingered, it became clear that Sarah had become the conduit for the spirits, forever tethered to the realms beyond. The room, once charged with spectral energy, returned to a semblance of normalcy. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the air held the heavy stillness of an unsettling calm. As Alex grieved the loss of his friends and grappled with the haunting consequences of their choices, Sarah, now a vessel for the spirits, stood on the precipice of a new existence, one that blurred the boundaries between the living and the dead, where the echoes of a fateful seance reverberated through her newfound purpose as the keeper of spectral secrets. The evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the small town. A chill wind rustled the leaves as five friends, bound by a shared curiosity for the unknown, found themselves drawn to the outskirts where an abandoned house stood in eerie silence. The old wooden structure, weathered by time and neglect, seemed to beckon them with its shattered windows and creaking timbers. Among the group were Alex, the thrill-seeker, with an insatiable appetite for the supernatural, Emma, the skeptic, who tagged along for the adventure, Ryan, the history buff, who couldn't resist the allure of a mysterious house, Mia, the empath, who felt a strange energy emanating from the old structure, and Jake, the jokester, who masked his unease with laughter. As they approached the forgotten house, vines snaked their way up the crumbling walls, like nature's attempt to reclaim what had been abandoned by man. The air around the house felt heavy, as if the very atmosphere held the weight of its untold stories. "Are you sure about this, Alex?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. "This place gives me the creeps." Alex grinned, the excitement evident in their eyes. "Come on, Emma. Where's your sense of adventure? This place is practically begging us to explore its secrets." Ryan, peering at the house through his glasses, chimed in. "I read somewhere that this place has been empty for decades. There's got to be something interesting inside." Mia, her eyes wide with a mix of trepidation and curiosity, added, "I can sense something, a presence. It's like the house itself is alive." Jake, ever the joker, tried to lighten the mood. "Maybe it's just a ghost looking for a roommate. Who's up for some paranormal cohabitation?" The friends shared a nervous laugh, their anticipation masking the underlying unease that lingered in the air. They reached the front door, its paint long peeled away, revealing the bare wood beneath. With a collective breath, they pushed the door open, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. As they explored further, Alex's gaze fell upon a room tucked away in the corner. In the dim light, they spotted an old wooden table adorned with an antique mirror that seemed to capture the essence of the fading sunlight. "This is it," Alex declared, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Let's set up the makeshift Ouija board here. Who's ready to make contact with the other side?" The friends gathered around the old wooden table, the makeshift Ouija board placed carefully in the center. Flickering candles danced shadows on the walls, adding an eerie ambience to the room. As they placed their hands on the table, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. "All right, everyone, let's see if there's anyone here," Alex said, their voice echoing with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The friends exchanged glances, their eyes reflecting a combination of skepticism and curiosity. The planchette began to move slowly across the board, guided by unseen forces. "Is there anyone with us?" Emma asked, her tone wavering between doubt and intrigue. The planchette spelled out the letters, "I am here." A shiver ran down Mia's spine as she felt a sudden chill in the room. "I can sense a presence, something old and something powerful." Ryan, engrossed in the experience, and questioned, "What do you want from us?" The planchette moved with purpose, spelling out, "Life." A collective gasp escaped the friends as they exchanged nervous glances. Jake, always quick with a quip, nervously chuckled, "Well, that's not ominous at all." As they continued their session, the room seemed to grow colder, and the flickering candles cast distorted shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the planchette moved more rapidly, spelling out a series of letters that no one had anticipated. "Meet me." The friends exchanged puzzled glances, uncertain about the meaning of the message. But before they could discuss it further, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Mia's eyes glazed over, her gaze fixed on the antique mirror. Unbeknownst to the others, she was slipping into a trance, a gateway to a realm where the living and the spectral intertwined. In her vision, Mia found herself standing in a place that seemed frozen in time. The air was heavy with an ancient energy, and a figure, cloaked in shadow, materialized before her. As the figure revealed itself, Mia was overcome with an indescribable sense of dread. The entity, with eyes like voids, spoke to her without words, conveying a hunger for life that sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, Mia snapped back to reality, her eyes wide with terror. The room felt charged with an otherworldly energy. The friends stared at her, concern etched on their faces. "What happened?" Alex asked, reaching out to Mia. "I saw it," Mia whispered, her voice shaky. "I saw the entity in the mirror, and it wants more than just contact. It wants to meet us in person." Unease lingered in the air as the friends hastily packed up their makeshift Ouija board and left the abandoned house. Mia's revelation about the entity's desire for physical meeting weighed heavily on their minds. The night air outside felt crisp, but a lingering tension followed them like a silent spectre. Emma, normally the voice of reason, couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within her as they walked away from the abandoned house. She cast uneasy glances over her shoulder, half expecting to see shadows lurking in the corners. Days passed, and the friends tried to resume their normal lives, but an unspoken tension held them captive. Emma, in particular, found herself haunted by the entity's presence. Reflections became her torments. Every mirror, every window seemed to hold distorted versions of reality, dark figures at the edge of her peripheral vision, disappearing when she turned to confront them. Nightmares plagued Emma's sleep. She found herself in a shadowy realm where the entity's whispers echoed through the void. Its voice was cold, commanding, urging her to carry out a sinister task. "Kill one of your friends," it murmured, the words reverberating in her mind like a malevolent chant. Emma woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The lines between dreams and reality blurred, and the once comforting realm of sleep became a realm of dread. The entity's voice continued to whisper in her waking hours, a constant reminder of the malevolent force that had latched onto their lives. Haunted and sleep-deprived, Emma hesitated to share her experiences with the others. Fear of judgment and disbelief held her tongue, yet the entity persisted, revealing itself in the reflections of her daily life, its form becoming more defined with each passing day. One evening, as the friends gathered at Mia's apartment to discuss the unsettling events, Emma excused herself to the bathroom. Alone in the dimly lit place, she stared at a reflection in the mirror, half expecting to see the entity staring back. To her horror, the figure materialized behind her in the mirror, its eyes voids of malice fixed upon her. "You must end the threat," it whispered, the cold breath of its words sending shivers down Emma's spine. Emma stumbled backward, her pulse racing. The entity's demands echoed in her mind, and she found herself torn between the safety of her friends and the malevolent force that sought to manipulate her. The weight of the entity's demands bore down on Emma, and as the days passed, her internal struggle intensified. The once close bond between the friends began to fray as Emma grappled with the malevolent force that whispered dark commands in the recesses of her mind. Haunted by visions and tormented by the entity's relentless whispers, Emma's behavior grew erratic. She withdrew from her friends, the isolation becoming a breeding ground for the shadows that plagued her. Every reflective surface seemed to harbor the entity's gaze, a constant reminder of the sinister pact it sought to forge. One evening, the friends gathered once more, hoping to find a solution to the growing menace. The atmosphere in Mia's apartment was tense as they discussed their next move, unaware of the internal struggle raging within Emma. As the discussion reached its peak, Emma's eyes darted nervously between her friends, the weight of the entity's demands pressing down on her shoulders. Unable to contain the torment any longer, she abruptly stood, her chair scraping the floor. "I can't do this anymore," Emma declared, her voice tinged with desperation. Confused glances were exchanged as the friends tried to make sense of Emma's sudden outburst. "I need everyone to leave now," her eyes pleading for understanding. Alex, concerned, approached her. "Emma, what's going on? We're here for you." But Emma recoiled, her fear manifesting as frustration. "You don't understand. None of you understand what I'm going through. We just need to leave." Reluctantly, the friends left, casting worried glances over their shoulders. Later, as Emma was alone in the confines of her apartment, she succumbed to the darkness that loomed within. Shadows danced around her, echoing the entity's sinister whispers that reverberated her mind. Over the following days, Emma's isolation deepened. She avoided reflective surfaces, fearing the entity's malevolent gaze. Sleep became an elusive refuge, the nightmares merging with waking hours. The entity's demands echoed relentlessly, driving a wedge between Emma and her friends. One evening, as Emma stared into the mirror, the entity's figure materialized once again, its eyes piercing into her soul. "Time is running out. The sacrifice must be made," It hissed, its voice venomous. Emma, now a mere shell of her former self, recoiled from the reflection. Tears welled in her eyes as she grappled with the torment that threatened to consume her. The once vibrant spirit that defined her had become a battleground for the forces of light and darkness. Desperation etched across her face. Emma made a decision that would alter the course of their fates. She reached for her phone, trembling, and began dialing a number. The night was heavy with an unspoken tension as Emma awaited Alex's arrival. The apartment, dimly lit by a flickering candle, felt like a battleground where the forces of light and darkness waged a silent war. Emma clutched her phone, the weight of a decision pressing down on her. As Alex entered the apartment, concern etched on his face, Emma greeted him with a forced smile. The air was thick with anticipation as they engaged in a careful dance of conversation, avoiding the ominous spectre that loomed over their every word. As the night progressed, Emma led Alex to the bedroom, the shadows dancing on the walls like wraiths heralding an impending darkness. The entity's whispers, now a cacophony in Emma's mind, urged her to fulfill the sinister pact. In the intimate confines of the bedroom, Emma and Alex sought solace in each other's arms. Their connection, once a beacon of warmth, now became a vessel for the entity's malevolent influence. As they lay entwined, the room seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. As the clock ticked towards the witching hour, Emma's movements became deliberate. Her eyes, once filled with warmth, now held a vacant gaze. The entity's demands echoed in her mind, drowning out the remnants of her humanity. In the stillness of the night, Emma's hands moved with an otherworldly precision, snuffing out the flickering candle. Darkness enveloped the room like a shroud, concealing the impending act from prying eyes. As Emma's hands closed around Alex's throat, a surge of power coursed through her veins. The entity, sensing the life force it craved, reveled in the macabre dance playing out in the shadows. In the final moments before the darkness claimed him, Alex's eyes mirrored a mix of confusion and betrayal. With a final, agonized gasp, Alex's life force was extinguished. The room fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the malevolent whispers that lingered in the air. As Emma stood over the lifeless body of her friend, a strange calm enveloped her. The entity, sated by the sacrifice, began to manifest itself. Shadows congealed, and the antique mirror in the corner of the room rippled with an otherworldly energy. In a surreal twist of fate, Emma felt herself being drawn towards the mirror. The boundaries between the physical and the spectral realm blurred, and with a jolt, she found herself standing within the mirror's confines. The entity, now free from the confines of its reflective prison, emerged in the physical realm, adopting Emma's form as it walked the earth once more. As dawn broke on the horizon, the apartment stood silent, bearing witness to the tragic events that had unfolded. The antique mirror, now devoid of life, reflected the emptiness that lingered within its depths. The entity, wearing Emma's guise, blended seamlessly into the waking world, its insatiable hunger ready to consume the life force of the living. The shadows cast by reflections held secrets that would remain buried, as the entity, now unleashed upon the world, sought new vessels to satiate its eternal hunger. And if you're still looking to fulfill your thirst for more horror, don't forget to check out this next video, unless of course you're frozen with fear already.